quite simply, kicks were rarely used within pugilism, a sport that literally at the beginning had no rules, right? Very, very few, if any, rules. And even in the Broughton period, when the sport was become more civilized, yeah, the rules are basically still non-existent. You could still gouge your opponent's eye, you could still pull their hair, you could still bite them, you could still, you know, in such a brutal, devastating sport, why weren't kicks used more often? Now, fighting at range is, in pugilism, not your friend, okay? And of course, you need to be at range to throw kicks, okay? Kicks can't be used up close and personal. They don't have the movement to be able to be used up close. Instead, you would throw a knee, which were used within pugilism. But throwing a kick requires, as I say, quite a significant range. It's the advantage they have, for example, over a punch, is they have a greater range and can be used to keep your opponent away from you, you know, from a really good distance. The only problem is, when you are fighting at range, your opponent has a lot of time to react to your attack. So if you throw a punch from full arm's length distance away, you'll see most bare knuckle fighters, they will lower their head in such a position. When the punch comes in, they will almost headbutt towards the punch. This is so that their face is moved out of the way of an incoming strike, and again, as I say, the forehead and the top of the skull, the crown of the skull, is exposed to the fist instead. A pugilist will more than happily take blows all day long from a bare fist upon their head, because they know your fist or your wrist will give up far sooner than their head will. Yeah, they might have a bit of a headache, but you're going to break your hand. And so throwing power punches from a distance is a risky thing to do within pugilism because of the bare fist. And so naturally you will find within pugilism the range of fighting is so much closer. We're talking within arm's distance, you know, closer than your full extension, okay? The reason as such is because the closer you get, the shorter the punch has to be. The shorter the punch has to travel, the less time your opponent has to react to said strikes. Even then, there's still some degree of risk. The face of your opponent is still mostly bone. It's still a pretty painful thing to punch. Instead, most of the time in pugilism, you will be wanting to strike to the body of your opponent, okay? This region here. The reason as such is the body is like a punch bag. It's quite soft. Even the bony areas like the ribs and that, you can punch them all day long and your fists will not give up before those ribs do. You try and punch your opponent's body from a full arm's length, you can't, because you have to reach down and kind of step forward. When you do that, you can see your face becomes exposed. You're going to get knocked out. Right? This is why kicks simply aren't used. It's not that they weren't effective. It weren't that they weren't, valued or anything along those lines. It's just simply the nature of pugilistic fighting is one of a close range that allows you to throw strikes at the body of your opponent. And so because pugilism was a much closer range sport, or still is, a much closer range sport, kicks simply just didn't really have their place. There was very little opportunity to throw a kick. And that is why kicks were rarely used within pugilism.